Welcome to Creating a Family. Talk about adoption, foster care, and kinship care. If you're brand new here, we are so glad you found us. If you've been here a while, you know that our executive director, Dawn Davenport, recently announced her retirement. My name is Tracy Whitney, and I'm the content manager here at creatingafamily.org. I've been with the organization since 2016, and I'm thrilled to be stepping into Dawn's podcasting shoes. We have a great conversation to share with you today. We're going to be talking about the new book, The Traumatized and At-Risk Youth Toolbox, over 160 attachment-informed interventions for working with kids and families in foster care and beyond, by Jeanette Yoff. Jeanette is a psychotherapist specializing in adoption and foster care with a master's degree in clinical psychology. She has over 20 years of experience treating children, teens, and adults with complex trauma histories related to abuse, neglect, adoption, and multiple foster care placements. She is an adoptee who spent 6 years in foster care herself, and she brings her professional expertise and personal insights to her work. She's also the founder of the Celia Center, a Los Angeles-based nonprofit supporting all members of the foster care and adoption constellation, and the clinical director of Yoff Therapy, a mental health center serving that same community. Welcome, Jeanette. We're so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this, and I'm excited to talk with you about what I've written and all the advice and interventions that I have for families.
Well, let's get started. Let's talk in kind of a brief overview of how early trauma can impact a child's developing brain. What are some of the ways that it changes the brain, especially when it comes to things like impulsivity or trust or the child's ability to learn or to focus? And the big one for most families is how it impacts emotional dysregulation or emotional regulation, I should say.
That's right. So early trauma does impact the brain because the brain is wired for connection. There's always two tracks in the brain, either go towards my caregiver because they're soothing and comforting, or move away from my caregiver because they're distressing and causing me overwhelm. And this occurs from the moment we're born. We need attachment. It's so crucial. And when that first connection is disrupted, whether it's through abrupt loss, through adoption, which is considered separation trauma, this sends a message to the developing brain that the world is just not safe. And if a child isn't soothed when they're distressed, whether it's through abuse or neglect, high levels of cortisol flood the system. And Don Dorsey talks a lot about this. He's a researcher on child development in the brain. And he says the cortisol levels make up for the lack of soothing. So think about how cortisol builds and builds and builds when a child's crying out for their caregiver. So this activates this stress response system in the body and in the brain. And so the amygdala, the hypothalamus, which is crucial, it's like the thermostat for the body. It regulates hunger, sleep, body temperature, and the whole adrenaline system goes into overdrive. And so the brain only has one choice, but to survive. And there's 5 ways that our brains do this. And it's fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or flop. And what's important to recognize is it's not a conscious choice. Is people are always saying, oh, they're doing this on purpose. No, it's a biological choice that the brain needs to make to regulate the body. So what Don Dorsey talks about is these kids are more prone to staying upset when they get upset because there's too much cortisol flooding the brain and it goes on repeat. It's a constant. And, I grew up in foster care and entered therapy when I was 13 because of suicidal ideation. And I remember telling my therapist, and I think stories are really important, that I always felt like my body was on a subway, always just on the go. And that's that impulsivity. I'm always aware of where's the door, where do I need to go in case there's danger? So it's the nervous system that is scanning the environment, which causes the inattentiveness, the impulsivity, the inability to trust. And so there are two types of behavior that I do want to point out that I think is really important, and that's hyperactive behavior. And that's kids that are just jumping from one thing to the other. They're distracted. There's no cause and effect thinking. And they're just in the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's hypoactive, which is they're not talking. They appear like they're not motivated. They can't trust others. They have a hard time talking and reaching out for help. And they can be overly compliant, which is fawning. Like, I'm going to do everything you want me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not even thinking about their own brains. They're thinking about what everyone else needs them to do. And it's hard for them because they're doing this push pull with not only with themselves internally, but with others. It's, I'll bring you close, but only so close because I'm trying to manage all of these things that are happening in my nervous system. And I will reference myself because I came from this lived experience. So I think it's important. The stories matter. And I was one of these kids. I had dyslexia. I had trouble reading. I needed special services to help my brain settle and feel more confident in my body because my nervous system was just out of whack. I had multiple placements. And at that time in the 80s, there wasn't this understanding that we have now about trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just wonderful that we have all this research today that informs parents so they know better what to do with these kids.
Yeah, I agree. I'm loving the access to trauma-informed resources, trauma-sensitive care, trauma-responsive information that helps me help the families that we support, but also helps me with my parenting. Just that added lens, if you will, putting, kind of like going from, a bright sunny space and putting sunglasses on, you can actually see things more clearly. And so having that filter helps. And I think that filter is a great setup for the rest of the conversation that we're going to be having this afternoon. I love that you talk about all of those behaviors and how they look to the outside and how they look to a parent or a caregiver. Can you talk a little bit about how we have to go beyond what it looks like on the outside, how we need to look at the behavior and kind of, we say all the time, behavior is a communication of a need. So how can we get there? How can we look at that and go, oh, he's not shut down, he's overwhelmed. Or he's not ignoring me, he's trying to cope with everything that's going on inside of his brain night. Help us put kind of feet on that.
Yes, so and I'm an attachment focused family therapist, and I'm very much on the understanding of being attachment informed, which is understanding that these kids are their inner world is a living hell.
Mm,
And Daniel Hughes talks about this. We need to accept and understand. Acceptance is a big piece of it, that actually internally they're working so hard on trying to regulate their nervous system that, think about it, it's going to impact their ability to learn because they're balancing their nervous system
hmm
and then learning how to be receptive to math, spelling, English, and also there's sensory dysregulation going on through the senses.
hmm
And this is another piece that's connected with the nervous system. And if you think about the brain as a computer, it's filtering all of this information, lighting, sound cues, touch, taste, smells, all of these sensory signals,
Memories.
memories,
Yep.
feelings, thoughts, sensations.
Yep.
Think about the brain as a computer. It's filtering all of this. And if we think about it, it's not that they won't behave, they can't behave. And that's the trauma lens because of what happened to them. So in a classroom, per se, a
hmm
child is attempting to learn, but they're also imagining there's a tiger in the room somewhere. Right? And then the teacher, it could be the slightest sense of rejection from the teacher that they're unlovable, unwanted, they don't matter, or they're so nervous to be called on that now not only is there a tiger in the room that's a predator, the teacher becomes a predator because anything that they do can be a rejection. And when a child senses rejection, they feel abandoned, they feel unheard. And that's when really the nervous system goes offline. And now they're in self preservation. How do I save myself and manage this experience that is distressing? And it is distressing. So it's understanding there's so much going on inside, and we are seeing it with these maladaptive behaviors, right? Fidgetiness, their inability to stay grounded. A lot of kids just cannot sit still. It's not what's wrong with them, it's about what's happened to them. So, yes, really accepting that trauma lens. And I'll have parents write it down on a card. It's not that they won't behave and I have them cross it out. It's because they can't behave. Even parents need visuals to go, okay, I accept this now.
Yep.
Right? And I tell parents, please don't ever ask a child with a trauma history, what's wrong with you? Because they already have low self-esteem. Their self-esteem is compromised. They're already hard on themselves. And I'll be sharing one of my interventions that I do with kids to help them release that pressure of feeling good enough. They're so hard on themselves. So we want to accept that, again, they're working very hard internally. Our role is to help calm their nervous system, recognize what sense could be stressing them out and overwhelming them. And the last piece is with the sensory system overload, it's asking the child what sense is really heightened for them. Because we have found, like one child I was working with in the classroom, he couldn't focus. And we were trying to figure out what was causing the distress. And once we asked the right questions, so out of the 5 senses, tell me what sense is the most heightened for you. He said, I can't pay attention because there's so much noise. Okay? So then there's a tool for that. He wore noise off headphones and he was able to self-regulate his nervous system, not be overwhelmed, and focus. And he was diagnosed with ADHD. And so it's asking the right questions and providing the right tools and helping school personnel and teachers understand what's happening internally. Because just because kids are not actively talking about what's happening to them does not mean it's not actively happening to them internally. So that's it in a nutshell.
Big nutshell.
In a nutshell. And it's how healing happens, really. Once we accept this piece, that this is the approach that they need, and that's being a source of comfort, and accepting the nervous system is out of whack, feels tsunami-like, is overwhelming for that child. And they're attempting to calm down that system, which is a lot of work for a child, especially when they don't understand what's happening to them. It's scary. It feels threatening. Why do I keep hitting other kids on the playground when I just want to play and ride my bike? Because they're in protective mode a lot of the time. So they need us to be soothing, calming, validating, and saying what we're seeing. I see you're having a hard time right now. I'm with you. I'm not going anywhere. And I also tell parents, because children with trauma histories have trust challenges, use the phrases let's, we, us, so that they feel there's someone co-regulating with them. They don't have the pressure of doing this all on their own. It's the parent that's aware of their own regulation, their own nervous system, that impacts the ability to co-regulate.
This interview is chock full of such excellent expert advice and support. And if your family is anything like mine, the chance to learn from guests of this caliber is so valuable. Help us help others find the podcast by sharing a rating or a review wherever you are listening today. So you talk about regulation as the foundation for healing. And you started to kind of go into a few of the things that we can do as parents and caregivers to create a culture of that foundation, a culture of connectedness and felt safety. Could you maybe put some practical activities or routines out there that will help us build that emotional safety in our home, specifically for supporting the co-regulation into self-regulation?
Yes. So there's a few things. And one of the key points is parents being aware of their 7 nonverbal cues. So parents often aren't aware of how they're presenting and approaching a child. And if you have like a father who's very tall and a child who's small, just the perception of their father being tall can feel threatening. So the research shows getting on the child's level and even getting below their eye level stimulates the prefrontal cortex and provides more soothing approach. And the second piece is when you're talking to them, talking to storytelling, tell them what's going to happen, beginning, middle, and end, which is called front loading. And if there's one thing that parents take away from this, front load, front load, front load. And that's getting below eye level, being aware of your 7 nonverbal cues, which are your facial expression, your eye contact, the way you're looking at them, your tone of voice. When you shift from I'm telling you what's going to happen to I'm going to tell you a story about what's going to happen, it actually regulates the child and brings them in to be receptive to what the parent's telling them. A parent's posture, how they're holding their bodies. I had a father in a therapy session who would cross his arms a lot, and he would complain, she never opens up and shares her feelings with me. Yeah. And I made him aware of his nonverbal communication and how he was communicating to her. And I wanted him to model vulnerability for her. And just being aware of that, he was able to open up. We did some discussion about how he was parented, because we will parent. I'm a mother myself. We will parent our children the way we were parented.
Mm-hmm.
And these kids need a different approach. And so we need to accept that as well. They cannot be parented traditional parenting. So the father understood that his parents weren't open to his feelings, which of course made sense the way he was parenting his child. So posture, gestures. My foster mother I would cry a lot as a foster child, and I would go to her, and she was compassion fatigued. She was. I'd been through a lot. I needed a lot of co-regulation. She was not trained. She didn't know what to do. It overwhelmed her nervous system. So when I would come to her, she would do this, oy vey. And I felt like a burden. And her gestures, just by doing this, made me go, okay. So I would go to my room and cry and just be alone in my feelings. Until when I was adopted, my mother recognized how much I was holding inside, that at nighttime she would have me punch pillows until I cried, because I was just holding all this stress and tension in my body. So it's a parent being aware of their 7 nonverbal cues, getting below eye level, communicating with a storytelling attitude, what's going to happen, front loading, and recognizing and saying what you see and what you hear, what you're experiencing. I see you're really upset right now. I hear you. Let's take a walk. Think about the senses. Let's get a glass of water. Even putting cold water on your face regulates the nervous system.
I had a little one that used to like to crunch ice.
There you go. Right? Chewing
Yeah.
gum. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And each kid is different. And it's
Right.
finding the right sensory recipe, which is
Right.
what they talk about in OT, right? And an OT will help with that because every kid is different. There's no cookie cutter approach. And
Mm,
that's what's complicated for families because, there's 3,000 parenting books, right? And telling you all these things to do, but it's trial and error. It's finding what works, right? And some kids gravitate towards one intervention where others gravitate towards another. So think also of a bottom up approach. So, like I was saying, putting water on the face, taking a walk. Think about ways that you can soothe the body. Even doing jumping jacks for kids just releases good endorphins. Holding things, help me carry this is a body up regulator because and parents definitely be aware of your own regulation because in a way you're giving them your regulated nervous system until their nervous
right.
system catches
Yes.
up.
What kind of co-regulation do you want to share? Co-dysregulation?
Right, right,
Don't want to share that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right, you can either be a source of comfort or distress, and I
Hmm.
know, and I've worked with families for so long now. I know parents come to me with compassion fatigue. They've tried
Hmm.
everything in the book. They're overwhelmed. But really focusing on your nervous system, getting your needs met, and recognizing the sensory needs in your child, applying
Hmm.
bottom up applications, interventions. So you had asked me about everyday routines,
Hmm.
right? Things we
Yeah.
can do. So I have a little list here for you. So routines, crucial. They need to know what's going to happen. So I am big on visuals, like a visual routine. What's the morning routine and pictures written out because they can't rely on that working memory because it
Hmm.
goes offline. So the visual reminders. I even have a parent who bought a slow down yield sign and she put them
That's
all around
fantastic.
the house because the kids were running down the halls, right?
Hmm.
This worked. She had yield signs, she had stop signs. It helped them regulate the environment because they had these visuals to
Hmm.
understand slow down, we're safe here. So having visuals, having a knowing what's going to happen,
Hmm.
front loading, front loading, even going to a party. I had one kid, he was going to the adoption Christmas party at the adoption agency. Well, he was the child in the home that was in therapy that was having a lot of challenges. They all got in the van. He had 5 siblings. They all drove to the adoption agency. And all mom said was, we're going to the Christmas party at the adoption agency. He interpreted that as something completely different.
Mm.
He would not get out of the car. He was holding on to the car for dear life. She didn't understand what was happening. And he had anxious attachment. And when I was curious with him, and curiosity is also another intervention, be curious and pretend like you don't know anything and you'll actually get more information from the child. And once we were curious, he said, I said, what was happening that you didn't want to get out of the car that day? You know what he said? I thought she was giving me away. So this was a kid who
Ugh.
needed a lot of front loading.
Yeah.
And it literally takes a minute. I tell parents, please tell him we're all getting in the car. We're all driving to the agency. We're all going to get out. We're all going to eat a great lunch. We're going to get Christmas presents. We're going to open them. And then we're going to come home, go in the car, come home and hang out and relax the rest of the weekend. And that literally took me 30 seconds. The beginning, the middle, and the end. and make sure you get their buy-in, their understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're good, they're more, and I don't like the word compliant, they're able to trust. That's the word of it. They trust the process because they trust you, and being consistent, like not going somewhere else before going there, because then they're gonna, wait, I thought we were going here.
Right,
And then the
right.
child starts to go get dysregulated. Well,
Mm-hmm.
she told us we were going here and now we're going here. What's really happening here? Because transitions are hard
Right,
for these
right.
kids. They just need a sense of control. And I was also one of those kids. I needed to know it was going to happen before it happened, because then it's predictable. Then
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know, okay, good, great. And then when we get there, oh, the world is safe. There is consistency, and I can trust you now. Because after I was adopted, I kept asking my adoptive mother, when are you going to give me away? I, I, I didn't understand adoption. And I was seven and a
Yeah,
half. I was doing
right.
this for a year and a half till I was 9. I kept
Mm-hmm.
asking her, when are you going to give me away? So we needed a lot of trust building. So
Mm-hmm.
another routine is just being with, naming the feelings, offering choices,
Mm-hmm.
utilizing sensory tools. I had another family who created sensory stations, corners of the room where this one child, he loved doing Legos. So she created a Lego corner, and that he could go to the Lego station when he felt overwhelmed, because Legos helped him organize. It was an external attempt to internally organize by building and putting things in order. It helped him regulate.
Yep.
She had an art station. So thinking about even weighted blankets while doing homework, breathing together. There's a tool called scaffolding, where you cross your arms, you put your hands on your shoulders, and you push down, which is proprioceptive input,
Mm-hmm.
and you're and pushing down and releasing stress. And it's just doing this, pushing down on the arms and releasing stress. Well, a parent did that during homework. She recognized by looking at the child's 7 nonverbal cues. So parents are aware of their 7 nonverbal cues, and pay attention to your child's 7 nonverbal cues. And she could see, because he started fidgeting,
Mm-hmm.
his gestures, that he needed a tool. And she said, okay, we're going to do scaffolding and pushing down on the shoulders. And he was able to go back. I think she also gave him some water. She was thinking about the senses. He was able to go back and complete the task, and complete the homework. So, and that's time, in a lot of time in parenting is what
Mm-hmm.
these kids need.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of kids didn't get, like we were saying, it's a communication of an unmet need. They just didn't get this. And it's the phrase I like to say, it's in your best interest. It
Right.
is. And
It's in everyone's best interest in the house.
exactly. Yeah.
And one thing I
So
would add here at this point to encourage parents is, in my experience, I don't have nearly as much experience as you do, but in my experience, if I'm present and safe for my child, then the particular intervention that I may use may work or may not work, but the larger message always works. The larger message, I'm here with you, I've got your back, you're not doing this alone. That bigger message, even when I screw up and choose the wrong intervention, it kind of balances out the fact that I chose the wrong intervention. So I want to encourage parents, even if you feel like you chose the wrong intervention in the moment, the fact that you're there and that you're trying, and your body language and your facial expressions and your heart are all saying, I've got you.
that's right.
It's
That's
okay
right.
to go ahead and try it again next time.
That's right. And another piece that creates safety and structure in the home is repair
Mm-hmm.
after a rupture. And if you feel as a parent, and I do have a biological child, however, I am an attachment focused parent, with my child. It works for any child. And repair is something that I would like to point out because
Yep.
parents often expect kids to repair, right? They threw their cell phone or they cussed at them or they did this, and I'm going to wait. With children with attachment challenges and trauma histories, it's the parent that needs to come back and repair. Really, really important because if you're expecting that child to repair, guess what? You will wait forever. And then you're going to
Right.
take it personal.
Right.
But it's the child needs to know that the relationship is important to the parent, that I'm coming to you. And I love the Circle of Security, which is a parenting program. They have beautiful graphics about the circle of security, and children need their parents to come to them and embrace them and be excited, and that the relationship matters to them. And then, as the child sees this consistently, they begin to internalize this relationship is important to me now.
Right.
And by a parent modeling, I'm sorry, I yelled, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to take responsibility over my reactivity. Then the child, and I'm going to tell you, kids learn what they live. The kid's going to turn around one day and go, you know what, mom? I'm sorry that I yelled today. And it's shocking for parents when they see this happen. So again, I tell parents a lot, make mistakes. Please go and apologize for your mistake, not for who you are, for your
Mhm.
mistake, and model that. And that's discipline right there. And kids learn. They want to feel that they matter to somebody. And again, they're working so hard inside, and they learn by what is expressed and how they live. So, yeah, those are definitely some structures and interventions to implement in the home to create more safety, more regulation, more tools.
Can you talk a little bit about why play is such a powerful intervention for building connection and setting the stage for healing for our kids?
Well, children make sense of their world through play.
Hmm.
It's their language. And so it's how they process the world, express feelings. They act out relationships with toys, with people. They can put words to things, especially if someone's with them, saying out loud, oh, I see how you're putting the family in the kitchen and they're eating, having a good meal. What are they eating? It helps kids make sense of their world.
Hmm.
And so it also, which is important to know, it bypasses that thinking brain and it connects with the emotional sensory brain, which is where trauma lives. So play actually, surprisingly, regulates that nervous system. And that's why play therapy is effective with younger children because
Hmm.
it allows them to express out of their bodies what happened to them, whether it's a dollhouse, it's a puppet, it's art, it's clay. It really helps them make sense. And a big piece that I do as a therapist is I train therapists to externalize what has happened and what they're holding on to internally. So, really using Play Doh, arts. There's something else called the sensory sock, which you can get online. It's a spandex. It's a big, it's like a blanket that's enclosed that has Velcro in it. You can see through the spandex material, but it serves as a womb like container
Hmm.
that the child puts their body in and they can push on the fabric, and it helps them feel a sense of where they end, where their body ends, and where others begin. And they can release all these big feelings in a contained environment. And I love using that in therapy sessions. And I'll often tell parents, get one for your child at home so they can go home. And now what we're going to do is bridge the kicking feelings or the yelling feelings, and it goes in your sensory sock now. right? Let's let out those kicking feelings. So it's giving them an opportunity to emote, not when they're angry or when they're overwhelmed, because we know that there's a part of them that is overwhelmed, that gets activated, that gets scared. We're going to now bring it in the sensory sock and release it. So, in essence, we can give them a sense of control of their world. They can feel a greater sense of control of their bodies. And the bottom line is we're rewiring the brain. So, play is really, really important for these kids.
So help parents and caregivers like me who struggle to incorporate like a tone of playfulness or a sense of playfulness in our homes. What are some one or two kind of practical ways to get started on that journey of becoming more playful to kind of unlock that ability in our kids' brains to bypass the thinking brain?
So, it's a parent, don't take yourself too personally, right? We're hard on ourselves. And I love the PACE acronym from attachment parenting.
Mhm.
So I do ask my families, and I'm asking all of our families, right, to memorize PACE. And PACE are attitudes. P is playfulness. And you don't have to do this in this order, but do something playful, right? It could be expand your box of thinking. Don't do something out of your box, but expand your box. Like have some jokes in your repertoire, lighten things up, make pancakes with smiley faces. Think about positivity because a lot of these kids just don't know how to play, how to have fun in a relationship, right? So pace yourself, be playful, laughter, watch something funny, show them something funny, do something funny. Laughter builds memories, trust, and connection and attachment. It's crucial. I'll have parents who have resistant teens and watch a comedy with your child. And I guarantee you, when there's something funny in the movie, what's going to happen is you're both going to look at each other
Mm.
and laugh. Think about that. This is our natural, innate ability of connection. We want to connect and laugh and have good experiences together. So, thinking about that, then you're making eye contact. Now you're having a neural pathway of connection. You're both
Mhm.
laughing in
Mhm.
sync. So simple and so crucial with attachment challenged children. So, yeah, that's playfulness. And then A is accepting the child, always non-verbally relaying to them, I love you unconditionally. I may not love that you threw your cell phone against the wall, and I'll put emphasis on that, but I'm not going to put emphasis on you. There's something wrong about you. I'm understanding. It's not that you won't, it's you can't manage your anger yet. I'm always staying in a growth mindset. You can't manage your anger yet, and you're learning. And now I understand we need some more tools to help manage the ability to regulate anger. So, one of my interventions is the anger bag, which is a fun intervention, and the sad bag. But going back to PACE, C is be curious, always be curious. And your whole tone changes when you're curious. And E, have empathy. Empathy for your child, how hard they're working internally. I do tell families not only are you approaching your child in a pace way, also apply it to yourself. So, P, be playful with yourself. Accept you're doing the best that you can. This is
Yeah.
hard. You
Yeah.
will make mistakes.
Yeah.
Be curious with how you're feeling and have empathy. This is hard. Parenting any child is hard, and parenting a child with attachment and trauma histories is
Mhm.
even harder.
Mhm.
So you do get to growth mindset, you get to do more self care, take care of yourself. Go do things that are fun for you. Because once you're, like we were talking, your nervous system is regulated, you're going to be a greater source of support and fun for your child, which builds attachment. Crucial.
Want to take a moment and say thank you so much to Jockey Being Family for sponsoring the library of 15 free courses on the Creating a Family website. If you go to bit.ly/JBF support, you can find all 15 of the courses. You can take one, you can take two, you can take all 15 of them if you want. And each one of them is geared to specifically strengthen the family that you are raising. Go to bit.ly/JBF support. That's bit.ly/JBF support. Thanks so much, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Let's shift a little bit to the school experience that our kids have. Most of our kids are school aged or are soon going to be school aged for those of us, raising really little ones. Let's shift to the school experience and talk about how trauma can sometimes mimic other neurodiversities and how hard it might be for a teacher to understand what's going on, and then how we can kind of educate the educators about our child and start talking about some of the school experience side of things.
Yes. So there's a lot of confusion about trauma and ADHD because they look very similar. And so teachers do get confused. And I actually attend a lot of IEPs, helping educating the school system in recognizing that the root causes of trauma and ADHD are different. So because kids who've experienced trauma, their brains are wired for that survival. Again, their nervous system is on high alert. So for teachers, they're going to see kids have trouble sitting still. Like I was saying, they're ready to run. They have difficulty paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Their brain is scattered, focusing on all of these things, and impulse control, emotional outbursts. So the symptoms of ADHD are similar, but here's the difference. Like you said, ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Trauma is a response to an overwhelming experience. So once we can differentiate the two, is this child diagnosed with ADHD? Or, and it's again asking the right questions, or are they having an internal threat to feeling unsafe in their nervous system, and it's showing itself in the environment? Because parents, actually school personnel, will see this behavior as disrespectful, distracted, disruptive. But the brain is actually doing what it's needing to do to function, right? And it's maladaptive in the environment to function and survive and manage what is all the stimuli that is happening around them. So we want to understand, is it the trauma that they're responding to, or is it a neurodevelopmental disorder? Because there are different approaches. So if we have a child who is ADHD, it's going to be very hard for them to do reward charts, because it's not that they won't, they can't. Also, a traumatized child may shut down, zone out, overreact because they're triggered. It's not because they're inattentive or oppositional. So it's asking, what's happened to this child? What does this child need in order to feel safe enough to learn, be receptive to learning? And it's really being a sensory detective and understanding what is driving the behavior. When we see the behavior, is it an unmet need to feel safe? And seeing it, it's not defiance. It's either ADHD or trauma. And we need to approach it with the right tools. When we see the difference, we can respond better. We can understand that they may need connection first. And with schools, trauma-informed schools, it's about focusing on regulation first techniques before correction. Before getting on the task, we need to make sure that they're regulated enough, their brains are online, they have the right conditions set up for learning, There's not too many distractions. I had one girl, she was diagnosed with ADHD. She also had a trauma history. And in school, she became extremely overwhelmed because, you know, if you think about schools, the lighting system can be very bright. Um, there were so many distractions in the room,
Mm-hmm.
the visuals, that we needed to create a little hub for her. And it was a cardboard piece that went on her desk. So she only focused on what was in front of her.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped her stay regulated in the classroom. She wasn't reacting to her trauma history. She was reacting to her inability to stay attentive because of the ADHD components
Mm-hmm.
of her inability to filter the environment because it was just so much stimuli for her.
Yeah.
And I do have a booklet called Helping School Understand How to Support Children Who've Been Traumatized in the Classroom. I'm happy to
Mm-hmm.
provide that for you because schools just need a lot of education.
Yeah, we can link that in the show notes. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Let's stay on the school track a little bit and talk, first of all, huge props to all the teachers out there who are managing one child with ADHD sitting next to a child with a trauma history, sitting next to a child with autism. I can't even imagine how hard it is to juggle all of that and still get through a lesson in a classroom. It's so impressive to me. And I think as parents and caregivers coming alongside of the teachers and saying, here's what we find helpful at home. Here's what we know works for Johnny at home when we do homework together. And let me know if I can provide anything that we use at home to support Johnny in the classroom under your care. It's it's quite
That's
the
right.
undertaking for teachers to juggle all of that. But in the vein of talking about school, they don't just do school at school. They have to do school at home sometimes too. And homework can be such a significant challenge for so many of our families. Can you give us a couple strategies, practical implementations of these kinds of attachment informed strategies to help us not let homework escalate into this power struggle or this battle or raging and gnashing of teeth, some of which might be the parents, not just the
Exactly.
kids. But yeah, let's talk about homework and
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. It can feel really insurmountable,
mhm,
especially with kids. A lot of our kids have IEPs,
yeah.
individual education plans. So
Mhm,
they need the accommodations. Not that we want them, they need the
mhm,
accommodations. So a big piece is front loading. I cannot repeat that enough. Helping them understand we're going to do math homework. So helping them understand what's going to happen and lessening the distractions in front of them. One
mhm,
piece of paper. And so starting with regulation, not homework. So make sure they're not hungry, they've eaten a snack, they have had time to decompress because
mhm,
when they leave school, they are mentally fried. They've been managing all the stimuli.
mhm,
Their bodies are working so hard. So we want to help them regulate first, transition home,
mhm,
a snack, some playtime, movement, even snuggling on the couch. So being in nature too, just going outside, turning off electronics, because a regulated brain becomes a learning brain. So that's one tip. Start with regulation before homework. Then we want to have routines, predictable homework time. When are we doing homework? And it also is the same time, the same place, and the same rhythms. It's not rushed. Rhythms are really important in attachment also. Like you
mhm.
were saying, if a parent's rushed, then a child's going to feel rushed and pressured. So a parent, let's give holding space for homework. This, we're going to create an environment, be aware of the lighting, the sounds, any distractions, turning off all cell phones, any distractions. Offer choices too, another technique. Choices, not commands. Instead of
Mhm.
saying, you need to do your homework now, right? That pressure, It's, do you want to start with reading or math? Which do you want to start with? And see how I'm being playful,
Mm-hmm.
PACE? Your tone sets the tone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Would you like to work at the table or on the floor? Some kids have difficulty sitting. So I'll use, and thinking about the senses and the nervous system, those workout balls, and they can bounce and sit on them. That actually helps them regulate.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids, there are bands they're like rubber bands you can put on the bottom of the chair that they push against. That proprioceptive input also regulates. There are seat cushions that have little spikes that actually feel good, and it's trial and error. What helps them stay focused on doing their work? So finding those pieces also.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe doing the sensory sock. Time to do sensory sock before homework, right? I like to call these bridges. What are we bridging to
Yeah.
bring them to the next task? And also that gives them a sense of control. Another tip would be that collaborative approach,
Mm-hmm.
sitting with them, sitting next to them, not across from them, that you're with them. It's a form of time in. Let's us, you're sending the message. I'm on your team. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing this together,
Yeah.
right? We got this. As opposed to you need to do this. I'm not big on you messages. It's us, we got this. Let's figure out this. I had one child, and this is one of my techniques. It's called the shame witch, and it is in my book. And the child kept saying, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. And the parent kept saying, you're not stupid, right? We're in a way, he was dismissive, not
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging what was coming up. And what the child needed was, I see you. There's a part of you that believes you're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I see it. So I help the parent separate out the child from their behavior, what is distressing. So the bread on the bottom of the shame, which is you're telling the child, you're learning all the good stuff. You're figuring this out. We're figuring this out. We can do this. It's okay to make mistakes, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
the lettuce, the pickle, the turkey in the middle of the sandwich, that's what's hard. That's what's stupid. This math feels stupid. It's hard, right? So we're putting the emphasis on the stuff,
Right.
not on the person. And then the bread on top is, again, the self-worth of, we got this. We can do this. And when he approached the child in this way, because a lot of these kids, they're hard on themselves, they have learning disabilities. It's not that they won't, they can't. The behavior of calling himself, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, actually lessened in intensity, frequency, and duration. And so, this little approach, using the shame witch, when you hear a child saying negative things about themselves, especially during homework, because they're expected to do this work that is challenging for them.
Right.
But when we put the emphasis in the right place, the child can have objectivity and begin to learn and take that pressure off of their brains that are already under
Yeah.
so much pressure,
Yeah.
and place emphasis in the right area, that yes, this math is hard. And so we're going to break it down. And so breaking it down would be the last technique, I would say. And that's really breaking down. I'll have parents fold if there's 10 problems on a piece of paper. And I
Mm-hmm.
was a kid who was dyslexic. I'm seeing tons of numbers. I can't self-organize that. So
Mm-hmm.
literally folding the paper so they see one problem at a time, as opposed to seeing 10 problems. It's overwhelming in and of itself.
It's the same skill teachers use when they're teaching a child to read, the
Yes.
chunking. Just take a section of the
Chunking.
sentence. Don't take the whole sentence. Let's just take
That's
this
right.
sentence first.
And make sure they understand what is being asked. Like, did we understand what are they asking in this question?
What do they actually mean here?
And I love and play dumb. Like, be curious.
Yeah.
PACE. Be curious. Go, wait, let's figure this out together.
Yeah.
What are they really asking?
Oh, some of us
What's
helping our kids with homework don't have to play dumb over those things.
exactly? I know.
I
I
tapped out
remember.
in fourth grade math and said, okay, this is a question for dad.
That's right. That's right. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll say this too, know when to call it quits.
Yes.
Some days it's again, not that they won't, they just can't. They're too
Yep.
flooded, they're too tired. And that's the halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Halt.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's you'll get to it tomorrow. What's more important? The homework or your child's ability to self-regulate and your ability to stay regulated? That's most important.
Yep.
Attachment challenge children.
And prioritizing and preserving that relationship with your child. I actually, for that very reason, preemptively put into the IEP that there will be times that my child does not complete their homework because I am preserving the relationship.
Right. And especially
They
if they
didn't
have an
understand it
IEP.
when I started it, but by the time we finished elementary school, all the people involved in her IEPs totally understood why I went that direction. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. Definitely we parents of traumatized children and need to be advocates because you know your child and you are trauma informed and attachment informed. And you do know ultimately know what they need. So we need to do a lot of education. I mean, schools are not trauma informed. They're not. I recently worked on a case so complicated. The school wanted the child in the classroom there all day, but they could only be there for a certain amount of time because their window of stress tolerance was only so
Right.
thin.
Yeah.
And so it's really helping them understand we want him to master this time frame. And once he masters that, then we can add more time
Right. Right.
in the day. But he has to master this first in order to master the whole day. And again, breaking the day down in chunks so he can
Yep.
tolerate stressors throughout the day. And providing the right team of support. Also, he needed a one-on-one aide that also needed to be trained in trauma informed care. This child had food neglect, so food was a
Mhm.
source of comfort. He needed snacks throughout the day that helped
Mhm.
him regulate, whereas another kid doesn't need that, but
Right.
he needed that. He was a kid who lived in his car with his mother and his
Mhm.
siblings. He did not have his basic needs met.
Right.
And so there's a lot of education that goes into educating schools and teachers and understanding why, what's driving the behavior, and how do
Mhm.
we mitigate that behavior, lessen. It's in all of our interests to do so, to meet these needs.
I'd like to pause here for a moment and say thank you to Vista Del Mar. They are a licensed nonprofit adoption agency with over 65 years of experience helping to create families. They offer home study only services as well as full service infant adoption, international home study, post adoption, and foster to adopt programs. You can find them online at vistadelmar.org/adoption. And thank you, Vista Del Mar, for sponsoring today's interview. So, speaking of advocating for our kids, both in school and in other areas of their lives, how do we know what kind of professionals and what kind of professional services our kids might need? What are the things that we should be looking for when we are looking for a professional?
Yes, so when we're working with children, parents need to be a part of the therapy process.
Mm-hmm.
So the first red flag is if you contact a therapist and they work individual
Mm-hmm.
with the child, not with this population. They need the caregiver, whether it's even a foster parent, needs to
Mm-hmm.
be a part of the therapy. So we're doing attachment focused therapy, trauma focused, trauma informed therapy. We're also, something we didn't talk about here is the grief and loss.
Mm.
There's also grief and loss component here that often gets thrown under the bus. Kids are grieving
Yeah.
losses of their birth family. They could have multiple foster homes, like I did. I cried missing my foster family,
Mm-hmm.
grieving. It had nothing to do with trauma, it has to do with attachment loss.
Yeah.
And so you want a therapist who's trauma informed, attachment informed, grief and loss informed, who understands the early adversity
Mm-hmm.
that children endure when they've experienced trauma and how it shapes that child's brain, their emotions, their relationships. You want to know that they have been trained in trauma focused
Mm-hmm.
behavioral therapy, EMDR, body mind techniques,
Mm-hmm.
trauma play therapy, attachment based therapy. And you can usually see this in their resumes,
Mm-hmm.
on their websites. What trainings have they had? Even Karen Purvis's trust based relational interventions, the connected child, Daniel Hughes's work, dialectical behavioral therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So, caregivers need to be a part of the treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and also you're receiving psychoeducation from the therapist. The therapist is also working with you and educating you about your child so that you feel confident, prepared. You have the tools, you're working with a professional, following up with the tools. Is this working? Is this not working? How do we fine tune this? Because there's layers.
Right.
It's the onion shell persona. Once we go through one layer, we then realize, oh, there's another layer we need to
Yeah.
approach
Yeah.
now as part of the treatment. And I've worked with kids over 10 years. And recently, one of the kids I worked with, she just graduated from high school. And I've been with her since she was 6. And talk about layers. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
went through layer, layer,
Yeah.
layer,
Yeah.
working on her grief and loss from her foster family.
Mm-hmm.
We had reunion with her foster families because she was grieving the loss of her foster family. It had nothing to do with her birth family. Then we found her birth mother and we did open adoption work. I mean, there were so many pieces to
Mm-hmm.
deal with. And then the trauma, she'd experienced sexual abuse. Then there was that layer, helping
Mm-hmm.
her feel safe in her body, helping parents learn how to be with a grieving child. And I tell parents a lot when children are crying, you need to tell them, I'm so sorry. You're feeling so sorry for yourself. You have a lot to feel sorry for. And
Mm-hmm.
let them cry.
Yeah.
Let them cry. Because when you do that, you're actually, that's the medicine. You're going to shrink the behavior, the crying episodes.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to lessen again in intensity, frequency, and duration. So, really understanding how to find a professional that works with this population.
Mm-hmm.
And they are hard to find, and you do need to look. Attach.org has a list of attachment informed therapists.
We have a resource list on our Adoptee Voices page of
Right.
adoptees who identify as adoptees in their therapeutic practices. I have a question about occupational therapists. We've actually used OTs in the past for some of our children, and I see tremendous value in it. Can you speak a little bit to what kind of value and a trauma-informed or trauma-sensitive OT can bring to a child's experience?
Yes. So when we have children with developmental disorders,
Mm-hmm.
children who didn't crawl at the right age, didn't learn developmental tools, their bodies weren't developed properly, they will need occupational therapy. And I have referred to a trauma informed occupational therapist that I work with here in Los Angeles because, you know, being in therapy, if their developmental milestones haven't been met, it's going to be really hard for them to stay attentive and learn regulation tools with the therapist because this is the unmet need. They have sensory processing challenges, like we've talked about,
Yep.
and they have motor coordination struggles. For instance, quick story, I worked with a child with low bone density. He couldn't write properly because he hadn't built the muscle in his
Mm-hmm.
bones to write, which was causing him to feel less confident in himself. He felt ashamed. So that little piece, occupational therapy, can provide fine and gross motor skill techniques that an attachment therapist,
Right.
not that we won't,
Right.
we don't
Right.
know how to do this. So once we can recognize they need more fine and gross motor skill development. Some kids haven't had proper tummy time, which is so important. It helps kids feel their bodies. They can have a greater connection to their nervous systems.
Mm-hmm.
OT helps support their executive functioning because once their bodies are more regulated and more fully developed, they can make better choices. They have better body awareness and better emotional control. So I encourage, if you have a child with challenges in motor coordination, OT only helps improve their overall developmental function. And it's so important. And it's part of the therapy process. So maybe I'll have parents sometimes do OT for a little while and then come back to do attachment focused therapy. Or we're doing both at the same time because it's very important, especially with kids with these early unmet needs. They need this occupational therapy input to catch up with their bodies.
Right. That's a
be
great
fully
way to put it.
functioning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, wow. Thank you, Jeanette. This was fascinating and super practical. I love the acronyms that you gave, the PACE and the HALT and the 7 body cues that we need to be paying attention to. Those are all fantastic tools for families. The book is called The Traumatized and At-Risk Youth Toolbox, over 160 attachment-informed interventions for working with kids and families in foster care and beyond. Jeanette, thank you again for your time. I hope everybody goes out and buys the book and starts practicing these interventions. Just don't overwhelm yourself by trying to pick several interventions. Just pick one at a time and get really good at it before you move on. But thank you, Jeanette, for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love this quote for parents: what's shareable becomes more bearable. So just being there and doing any intervention with a child is so helpful, crucial for their development and overall attachment. So I wish you all well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.